All right, welcome to the fourth episode of Mississippi Stories. And I'm really excited about our guests today. But first, I'll just introduce myself. I'm Marshall Ramsey, editor-at-large at Mississippi Today. And of course, you can find other Mississippi stories at mississippi-today.org. As soon as my brain starts working, we'll get going here in just a second. But really excited about our guest, Tate Taylor. He's an American filmmaker. He's an actor. He's based in Churchill, Mississippi, which is near Natchez. He's a native of Jackson. Tate's a graduate of Ole Miss and has directed several films such as the Oscar-nominated movie The Help, the big blockbuster, the James Brown biopic Get On Up, The Girl on the Train, and the movie that made me scared of Octavia Spencer for life, Ma, Ava, and thanks for that one, and the brand new movie Breaking News in Yuba County, which is out now, which is streaming, and you can get online at all your favorite streaming places, I suppose. Tate's on the board of Film Natchez, which we'll talk about a lot today, and in his spare time, he renovates historic homes. Tate, thank you for taking the time today.
Hey, thank you. And you got it all right. I appreciate that.
I got it right? That's a first. I've been so been one of those kind of days, but I really do appreciate you taking the time on this. And I want to say thank you up front for what you're doing to help rekindle the film industry here in Mississippi. You know, when I moved here in 96. And I guess that was about the time that Time to Kill came out and some of the productions were happening up in Canton area and everything started going and, they built a sound stage up there and everything. And then for some reason, the tax credits were cut and things started dying a little bit on the vine. And, I've sat down with Ward Emling a million times and interviewed him and, you could see him pulling all 6 of his hairs left out of his head on some of the stuff, but then they brought it back. And what you're doing down in Natchez is really fantastic. And wanted to say thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
So you grew up in Jackson, which I think is really cool that you and Catherine Stockton were friends growing up, which paid off later on down the road, I think, for both of you. But you grew up, then you ended up going to Ole Miss, which when you were at Ole Miss, what did you think you were going to be when you grew up?
I truly had no idea, which is why I think this new phenomenon of kids taking a gap year or two before college makes a lot of sense. I didn't realize I was creative. I was creative in high school. I was involved in a lot of creative endeavors and clubs and such. So I brought creativity to college and I just didn't know what I wanted to do. So I chose marketing because I really thought advertising might be fun because, basically advertising, you look at some of the commercials out there, they're goofball, fun skits. I didn't know that at the time. So I jumped into marketing. And then when I graduated, I ended up selling jet fuel and petroleum for Mapco Petroleum up in Memphis, Tennessee. I went, okay.
So seriously, and I'm laughing a little bit because I wanted to be a cartoonist, but at one point my dad said, you need to get a marketing degree because he said, there may be a lot of people that are more talented than you, but if you can outsell them, you'll always be able to live. So it's sounds like we were on parallel paths on that. You graduated in 91 also, right?
Right.
Excellent. So here you're selling jet fuel. And I take it that wasn't probably the most fulfilling job in the world.
Well, that's what was so funny about it. It was the job market of 91, which was right after a horrific recession that started my freshman year in 87. It was one of America's worst recessions. And it was the job market of 91 and recruiters weren't even coming to hire kids. But I had been very active creatively at Ole Miss, bringing concerts to the campus and within my fraternity. And evidently this petroleum company wanted somebody young and that was fun. So they decided that's what I would be. And the next thing I know, I have a plaid suit, a Buick LeSabre, and a secretary named Bert. And I didn't know what I was doing. And they just said, go sell jet fuel. And I went, okay. And, but really all that meant was taking oil buyers to eat steak, drink, play golf, and go to strip clubs. So that's what I was paid to do. And they were buying jet fuel from me, but I kept talking to my boss because I wasn't fulfilled. And I kept saying, I go, what are we doing? He goes, you're doing great. You sold $20 million worth of jet fuel this last quarter. And I go, but now what? And he goes, what do you mean now what? I go, but but now what do we do now? And what I didn't realize is I was saying, but what am I making? And that's when I realized that I needed a creative field, and I didn't know that was the word. I couldn't even verbalize that I needed to be creative because I just didn't know that's what it was. So I would come. I remember they came to Memphis where I was living, and they were starting to film The Firm, and they were filming it down the street from me. It was on a golf course in Midtown Memphis. And I would come home from my oil job, take off my suit, put on a black t-shirt and jeans, and crawl up in the bushes and watch them film, not knowing what anybody did or who they were. But I said to myself, I want to be in the entertainment business. I don't know what, I don't know where, I don't know how, but this is what I want to do. And the E Network had just come to the Memphis affiliate. And I started watching whatever that Greg Kinnear show was. Was it Talk Soup? I think that I got started watching that, and I'm like, if this guy can do this, I mean, so I just quit. Everybody thought I had lost my mind, and I actually called a dear friend of mine, Sparky Reardon, and drove down to Ole Miss to hopefully get him to talk me out of quitting one of the only jobs any of my friends got. And he goes, you better quit that job. I can't believe you've been up there selling. You need to go to New York, like you're saying, and just follow your dream. I went, oh, crap. And he was right.
Yeah.
So I quit and moved to New York and was a PA for Viacom Networks and did work for Beavis and Butthead in a show called Pete and Pete on Nickelodeon, making $250 a week.
In New York.
Left a company car expense account. But that's how strong the urge was.
Yeah. You also did some acting too, and you kind of jumped in. You were in the Groundlings, weren't you?
I was. After New York, I came back to Jackson and was a production assistant on A Time to Kill. And that's where I met Octavia. And then she and I decided, let's just go out to LA and give it a whirl. And I couldn't decide because I don't like it when people just want to be famous, which is so prevalent today. And I couldn't decide if I liked acting or if I was seeking notoriety, and I just couldn't tell. And if it was the latter, I didn't want to do that. So someone suggested that I take an improv class at the Groundlings, and then I would see if I liked doing it, and I loved it. It was so fun. Melissa McCarthy was in my class, Ben Falcone, all these friends of mine, and we all showed up at the same time, broke and clueless. And the Groundlings is a great training ground for anything you want to do in our business.
That's awesome. Will Ferrell was in the Groundlings.
Yeah, it's Will Ferrell, Lisa Kudrow. It's just a great Kristen Wiig. Yeah.
So at this point, I mean, seriously, you had stuck your finger in enough different little bits of the business, and you're like, okay, I'm just full blown. When did you start deciding you wanted to direct?
Well, that's what's funny. So at the Groundlings, you write sketch, and you write sketch that promotes yourself.
Yeah.
You know, you see these bits on SNL where you can see that Lorne Michaels is letting this company member try out this new character. Well, that's all the Groundlings is. And the more I kept writing sketch, I had all these great performers in my class. I didn't want to be in them. I wanted to make them do stuff. It just cracked me up writing it. And I would put my sketches up, you audition them for the class, and it would be this restaurant scene, and I wrote it, and then all I would do is come by and say, can I get your check? And they're like, hold on, you're not supposed to be an extra in your own sketch. I go, I don't want to be in it. I want to make Melissa McCarthy do a somersault and then ask for the check. That's more fun. So that's when I realized, okay, what does this mean? So I took one of my sketches that I did at the Groundlings called Chicken Party, and it was before digital. So I put $45,000 on my credit card when I was grossing about $15,000 a year as an actor, and filmed it to see if I would like storytelling. and we shot it on film, and Melissa McCarthy was in it, and Octavia Spencer and Allison Janney. Everybody was, they were just my friends. And I made the short film, and I was in it too, because I wanted to see how that, and I hated being in it the whole time. I wanted to be behind the camera and making these people do things. And that's when I realized, oh, I think you want to be a storyteller. And then that was it. The short film was a success, and that was kind of a jumping off point for where I am today.
You know, as a cartoonist, there's been like Charles Schultz and The Far Side and Calvin and Hobbes, and then a lot of the editorial cartoonists like Jeff McNelly. Those were all of my idols growing up, and that's how I kind of learned how I wanted to do. You as a director, did you sit there and eye certain directors and say, oh, I really like how she does this, or how he does this, and got the style? Or is it just one of those things that you just jumped into it from what you had seen so far and just learned on your own?
I was always influenced. It was funny. A lot of directors are technical. They're about the lens, the shot, the camera position, the trickery. I've always been a director that it's story first. It's character and writing first. I mean, I can see something with the camera never moves, and if the story is great, I love it. So I always responded to storytellers like the Coen brothers. I just loved how they just broke all the rules. And I love the movie, the Blues Brothers movie as a kid. I mean, you see this Nazi driving off a bridge, then he's floating 30,000 feet. I just love the zany stuff. And so those were the people that kind of influenced me. And I said, I like this movie. And I like dramas. Even as a kid, I loved Ordinary People when I was 10. Snuck it on HBO. So yeah, I would say them. I would say the Coen brothers influenced me quite a bit.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about the Blues Brothers. That was a movie I loved as a kid, and it's so funny because I love it different now for different reasons than I loved it as a kid. There's just kind of movies that just gets better. Because I mean, you watch it as a kid, and you're like, "That's really funny," and I hate the Illinois Nazi Party, and and I could probably recite half the lines. Now I'm watching it, and I see all these great, musical legends that are floating around in it. It just makes me nostalgic. It's great.
Well, that's why it was so fun, because it's one of my favorite movies. And when I directed Chadwick and Get On Up, the James Brown biopic, I said, I have got to get Dan Aykroyd in this.
Yeah.
And think about it.
I know.
James Brown was in that movie.
So you made that connection. By the way, Dan Aykroyd is one of the nicest human beings on the planet.
Yes.
I sat next to him at a banquet, and it was like I had literally run into my old friend that I had not seen in 20 years.
He's humble. He's nervous. He's a dork, which just makes him adorable. Yeah, he's fantastic.
He loves Mississippi. Oh,
yes,
my gosh, that guy
loves it.
He was like a kid just talking about all the different things. It was just amazing. So it had to be fun. By the way, I know you had to be smiling when Chadwick got the Golden Globe the other night.
I did. It's long overdue.
Yeah.
A lot of what's happening in entertainment in recognition is long overdue. He did not get the attention I think he deserved after Get On Up. So it's amazing. Kind of nice to see that come in full circle.
Isn't that funny how awards work? It seems like you get awards for stuff that maybe what you did 2 or 3 back before was better. It's the same way with Pulitzers for cartoonists too.
You got to know this: the award system, it is a business.
Yeah,
people don't realize that it is a business. There are machines behind who gets what and when, and there's nothing wrong with it. But I think people have this idea that it's this glitzy, glossy recognition. No, it's machines behind all of it. Lots of money at stake.
Yeah, I'm about to say it is show business.
Yes.
Definitely the business part. Yeah, I mentioned Catherine earlier, and of course she wrote the book The Help, which was phenomenal, was such a huge bestseller and everything. And I guess it didn't hurt that you grew up with her and all that, but she also believed in you and your talents and your ability when that helped you end up getting to direct that movie. Talk about your relationship and how that ended up doing and why you decided to film it here.
Well, it's actually a really funny story. Catherine and I have been friends since we were 5 years old. I mean, literally friends, talked every day since then. We were kind of lived in the same neighborhood, and we were both raised by single moms. We were latchkey kids, so we would just always meet out and just get in trouble, and we always supported each other. And she had written The Help she told me she was writing it, and I kept asking to read it. And like most artists in a first time venture, she was insecure about it. I don't know if it's any good, and I don't want you to read it, because she and I are very honest with each other. So I don't think she wanted to deal with it. And she'd written the book, and she'd gotten 60 rejections from agents. And so she just thought the book was dead. And she finally said, okay, I'll let you read it. And I read it, and I called her. I said, I swear to you, this is good. This is all before the book came out. People don't know that. And she goes, really? I said, I promise it's good. I said, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to make it into an independent film, and we're going to shoot it in Greenwood, Mississippi. And then when the film comes out, we'll get you a publisher. She goes, I think that's a great idea. So I got the rights. I had already scouted Greenwood, was going to put Octavia Spencer in it, and all my friends, just like Chicken Party, Allison Janney. And then Catherine called me. My partner and I had started to raise money, and she called me. She's like, you're not going to believe this. I said, what? She's like, I got an agent and a publisher. I went, that's so amazing. But we didn't think anything was going to happen. So we just kept moving forward with pre-production in Greenwood. And then the book debuted, and it just skyrocketed. And I was already down the road with making it into a movie. And she goes, oh my God, I'm the New York Times top 10. I said, I bet our business model is going to change on this movie. And so when the book became popular, all of the usual suspects came out of the woodwork wanting the book, Scott Rudin, all the studios, and they all tried to get the book. And she goes, no, my friend Tate's doing it. So then they would all bring me into their offices. I'd already written the screenplay too. I mean, it was all done. And they would bring me in their offices and say, all right, so your screenplay is really good. I said, thank you. They go, but what are your intentions? I said, well, I'm going to direct it and produce it in Greenwood, Mississippi. They went, but realistically, I said, realistically, this is what's going to happen. If you don't want to do that, don't call me again. So then I was the crazy actor in LA that was holding the help hostage. So people realized out there that my option was about to run out in like 10 months, even though the book was just going higher and higher and higher. And they were waiting for my option to expire so they could go in and get it. And Catherine goes, and then the night before, she goes, oh, this is going to be hilarious. Not only did I extend your option, I extended it for $1. Because she said, you're the only person that can make this. It'll get ruined. And so then Hollywood was like, shit. So finally they started talking to me, and Spielberg read my script, and he said, okay, if he wrote this script, he can direct it. And he gave me a shot, and that was it.
If you look back on your life at the very end, I would think that getting a call from Spielberg saying, if he wrote this script, then that's got to be that's a pretty darn cool thing for somebody.
It was cool. It was cool. It's a great lesson in life, because I bet the farm, man, I just didn't work. I ran up, I think I had $180,000 on credit cards over the 3 years, just paying my bills, because I was not going to stop. This was going to work. And it took that much effort to get it going. And it's just a lesson to anybody in this business. You can't fail if you don't quit. I was 40 years old. The year before, my mother came to visit me in California, and she goes, I love you, son. And I can appreciate what you're trying to do, but do you think you'll ever make money? I was like, oh my God. So you just got to work hard.
I bet say you've probably done more with credit card debt than any person on the planet.
Man, I was so good at it. I didn't even pay interest on that credit card debt.
That's impressive.
Ever. I had this flow chart with a dry erase board in my den. Capital One, interest free, expires this date. Get Bank of America to pay that one. I just was like credit card,
Right.
convenience check hiding.
I was just seriously just thinking about that when you were talking about, other people wanting to get a hold of the movie. And I was just trying to think what would happen if you had somebody that had no idea about Mississippi, the number of cliches that would have probably been in that movie from the beginning to the end. I mean, I doubt anybody would have been wearing shoes.
Well, it's like my dear friend Joel Schumacher, may he rest in peace. He really was a good friend. When A Time to Kill was being filmed and Octavia and I were on the set, I was like, why is everybody so sweaty?
Exactly.
Everybody in a seersucker suit. What do they think? Where is this? The Amboseli National Forest in Kenya? We have air conditioning.
We were moving from San Diego to here at that time, my wife and I watched it. And of course, Ashley Judd looked like somebody sprayed her with a hose and everything else. And my wife's like, I'm not sure I want to move there. It seems to be kind of gross.
No, Catherine and I joke, if it had gone somewhere else, it would not have been filmed in Mississippi. I assure you. It probably would have been filmed in Canada or California. And in a scene, you would have seen mountains behind Hilly's house or palm trees.
Yeah.
And everybody would have been sweating and had church fans and had a bourbon at all times.
And that would take you.
And Catherine knew that, and she knew that before she had a publisher.
Well, Greenwood was such a great choice too, because it really did look like Old Jackson.
Yeah, absolutely.
It really did. I mean, it was on that, and I think and I remember when you were filming that and when that was going on. I had a radio show on one of the networks here, and I remember bringing in people that were working on the movie and talking about it and everything. That right there. That movie is proof why Mississippi needs a very, very vibrant film industry for two reasons. Number one, obviously the economic reasons, because of the amount of money it brings in during filming, but the afterglow on that movie. I mean, it kind of created a whole tourism industry. I mean, Fred did a great job, obviously, with the alluvium and everything else on that.
Right.
But The Help obviously brought in a ton of money and a ton of visitors afterwards. And it gave Mississippi something to be proud of.
It was. And I'll tell you what, hats off to Haley Barber, because we didn't really have a credit system. And I got a meeting with him and explained what I wanted to do. And he said, let's do it. And he tracked the dollars. There's something you get called petty cash.
Yeah.
It's cash that each cast member and employee gets to live on. And he tracked the bills, and we dumped $17 million directly into the hands of Greenwood citizens over 6 months. And I remember going into Jack's liquor store, and they had this crabby old lady that ran it. And she just was not helpful. She came around on her walker and just threw her arms around me. And even Fred Carl said it was the most money the alluvium had ever made. And he goes, it wasn't on the rooms. It was on the civic pride and all the cast and crew coming to eat at our restaurant.
Right.
It makes citizens of a town recognize their town is cool, so they start participating in the comedy in the economy. It's like adrenaline.
It really is. And it's another thing too, that in the 25 years I've lived here, when you do something good on a national stage, people in Mississippi embrace you and love you. And I know you got a lot of probably praise on that. Why did you decide to come to Mississippi to create at headquarters, Ground Zero? I guess Ground Zero is another part of the state, but why did you decide to move to Natchez and make that kind of the epicenter of your film world?
Well, the evolution is interesting. I had left Mississippi and I thought I would have left forever. And The Help, I realized it was so important to shoot it here, also in honor of the women that it was about. Women who were doing very much the same thing in our state when the movie came out. Yeah. I mean, that's a livelihood. And so it was morally important to come here. So when I came, all my cast and crew were like, you're making us go where? In August? Mississippi? Isn't Greenwood down the road from Money, Mississippi, or Emmett Till? I go, yeah. And it was really hard to, of course we own up to our history, but it was indefensible with certain people's fears to say, don't worry about it. I couldn't do that.
Right.
And that's a cross we bear to this day. Um, but what was cool is when I got there, I started looking at the bugs and the roadkill and the tornado warnings and the religious hypocrisy and the weird race relations and going to church and then drinking milk punch to oblivion right afterwards with the deacon's wife. And all my castmates and crew members, they fell in love with it. And they started coming up to me saying, I had this all wrong. This place is heavy. And that was another thing. They go, it's interesting to be somewhere where you feel all that crap. You feel the history. And as an artist, it's very inspirational. I mean, you can just, people say that about me all the time. You feel everything. You feel our joy. You feel our past. You see it. Nothing's hidden under the rug. And so I went, this place is cool. But what happened was, shooting in a small town like Greenwood, it's like a studio backlot. It's so small. We all walked to each other's houses and we all had dinner at night, because in big cities, you get in a car and you go home and it takes 2 hours to get home. And then you have to take 2 hours to get back to work. So you don't get to see each other. So I coined the word, it was film camp. And all the actors go, I like film camp. This is fun. And I said, well, shit, excuse me. I said, I wonder if we could just do this here. We got the incentive that's kind of slowly potentially going to work. And then, prices in LA for homes are just ridiculous. And I said, why don't I get a cool old home in the middle of nowhere and I can restore? And then I did that, and that happened to be in Churchill, and that happened to be north of Natchez. So then when I was doing the James Brown movie, I said, let's shoot it in Natchez. And the same thing happened again. It was film camp, and everybody had a blast. And all my cast and crew always wants to return here. And another good thing about the film incentive, you mentioned break and use in Yuba County. Mississippi and Natchez got press that you could not buy. You can put all of the Southern Living ads you want. Wanda Sykes was on Jimmy Kimmel, and she said to everybody, I filmed this movie in Natchez, Mississippi, and it was the greatest place and the most fun, and the people were so cool, and I love it. You should go to Natchez. That happened with Allison Janney, Aquafina, all these people that are very blue-minded politically, but it didn't matter because it was true. And then when you have that happen on top of Natchez offering $6,000 for someone to move here, and then while they're all over the national news and world press saying you got to go visit Mississippi, and then Forbes votes us last week, Natchez is one of the top 5 places to go during the pandemic. It creates this thing that you just can't buy. It all works together.
Well, when I filmed down there a few years ago, like I said, I mean, Regina Chavanaugh with Jennifer Combs, with, you got Chesney and the Doyles down there, Mark and Chesney doing their film there, and Glenn Ballard being from there, and Greg Isles being there. There's already a creative community in that town that's just off the charts. And I just always wondered, I said, when's it going to pop? And I remember when you first bought the plantation, you're talking about you didn't have cell service and everything out there. And I would imagine now, with you're doing a lot of the film production and so forth, setting out there, that you probably do have better cell service. I would
No.
No. Okay.
And C Spire, if you're listening, we have no fiber optics. We have nothing. We have satellite internet. And it was really something. I have decent internet at my house, and during the pandemic, I had to let some rural kids come here and do their online classrooms because they can't. This is not what our story's about, but we need fiber optics statewide.
No, I agree with you 100% on that.
No, I have no pull. I am just screwed out here.
Well, but you touched on something that's really important in the state, because we've already got these little creative hubs popping up. Oxford, Starkville. A lot of it's based around where universities are, and I know you have Co-Lin down there and Alcorn's up the street. But having that fiber and so forth, it allows people that, like you said, could live in LA do everything they need to do right here in Mississippi. So
Absolutely. And
yeah.
people are moving here, and I just have to tell them internet's going to be a little slow, but it could.
Yeah.
I mean, fiber optics and education for people's children is paramount for getting people to move here.
Right.
That's what I have learned. Those are the two things. We've got the food, we've got the booze, we've got the cheap, we've got the cheap housing,
Yeah.
we've got the fun. But if we're going to bring people in, fiber optics and education, public education.
Yeah, right. You had me at food and booze.
Yeah.
So that's good. That's why I moved here. So it's
But
definitely
all my crew members, they have an 8-year-old kid that wants to learn the trumpet in junior high. I have to say, they don't do that anymore. It's awful.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the arts is such a, I mean, I'm not like, believe it. That's one of the things that's why I liked Haley too, because Haley recognized that.
Oh, he did.
And he really did, just went out of his way to promote our, I mean, seriously, you go up to the BB King Museum, for instance, in Indianola, and you look at the guest book, and everybody is from Europe.
Yeah.
I mean, it is.
Same with Natchez.
Yeah. And so is that kind of what, wanting to create that infrastructure, was that kind of what got Film Natchez started?
Well, what the Film Natchez started for a main reason is Octavia and myself both left. Octavia's from Montgomery, Alabama.
Okay.
And we were 25 and we became best friends. And I said, let's go to LA. And we went. And we didn't go with money. We didn't have a pot to, in.
Yeah.
But we weren't strapped down by having to stay here. People often are taking care of a parent or a little brother or a little sister. We were just untethered. So we got to leave and go do this. And I said, you know what? There's so many creative people in our state, but they don't get to leave. And it's not economic. They just don't have the luxury to pick up and move. And so whenever we've made a movie, we have all these young Mississippians who want to work on it, and they work on it, and they're excited. And much like after A Time to Kill, I said, I go, Octavia, y'all should come out. And they go, we can't leave. And I'm like, well, that's why I'm going to stay here and make movies. So there will be permanent production. And Film Natchez is an organization we founded to train these kids and have them get ready. And in Film Natchez, we bring in top professionals in my field, and the kids come there. It's like Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. and kids from Tupelo have driven in. Kids from the coast have driven in. Like, that means they left their house at 3 a.m. and they spend their day with these professionals just asking questions. Accessibility is often what you need more than anything.
Right.
And so that's what Film Natchez has done. And we've been Greg Isles, you mentioned Greg Isles, his son worked on breaking news in Yuba County. And I think Greg said, I didn't think I could ever have a job in Natchez. People leave, they talk about the brain drain. A lot of the brain drain is because people want to be stimulated with the cool profession.
Yeah.
And a girl moved back to Natchez from Washington, D.C. She said, I moved back to Natchez because of what you guys are doing. And I get it. And I don't need to live there. I'm going to live in my hometown. So that's another layer of what all this does.
Your board is high powered. I mean, you got John Norris, Octavia's on it, Deborah Riley Draper, Jennifer Combs, Cleta Ellington. She's from Jackson. Yeah. I mean, all of them, and they all different little specialties. And
right.
Jennifer, it's funny you talk about that story about, kids not thinking they would have a future in there. Jennifer was saying, I think it was Huck Finn. She was like an extra working on that set on that. And she's like, I want to go get into movies. And then she ended up becoming a producer at 20th Century Fox because of that. So I'm thinking about what you're doing and the opportunities you're providing. I mean, in 20 years, our whole landscape here may look totally different just from the seeds that you're planting through Film Natchez. Yeah, God willing, from your mouth to God's ears. That is the plan. It goes beyond a tax incentive. It's people are moving to Natchez now because of this synergy of what I'm doing here with the aggressive city government's doing. Right. And it's all, people are coming. Well,
They've
the
had
nice thing,
they've
yeah.
had like a 20% uptick in real estate sales in Natchez. It's bizarre. It's
But
great.
by the way, I was going to ask you, y'all survived okay out at your place during the ice storm, right? Because I know a lot of friends down in Natchez still.
We lost power and water.
Oh, you could do that in Jackson.
Yeah, but we just had fun and
Yeah.
just dealt with it.
By the way, congrats on renovating the house and everything. It's beautiful, the pictures I've seen. And it looks like one of those kind of places where you could have a ton of people in the house and it doesn't feel like you have a ton of people in the house.
Well, it's funny you say that, and that's why people love to come back. When I did Breaking News in Yuba County and Ma, all the actors stay and live with me.
Not in the basement, I hope.
No, they're everywhere. It's so much fun, and it also adds to the creative process to
Yeah.
finish your day of work and not go isolate in the Best Western. And we all cook dinner together and have cocktails and dance, and it just never stops. But it's a lot of fun. It's why I got such a big house.
Yeah.
It was for that purpose.
Yeah, Allison Janney said that she'd make a movie with you any day of the week just to get to go hang out.
Oh, it's fun.
Yeah. So.
She actually got property down in Churchill, so she's going to
Did
build
you
a cabin.
really?
Yeah, it's really cool.
Didn't you buy the place next door too?
I did, and I filled that up with actors as well. And it's so much fun. And I built a restaurant out here in Churchill that's going to be opening this spring. And we just built a restaurant across the street from our stages on the Bluff.
Oh, wow.
And I'm brought in an executive chef from the Ritz-Carlton in St. Thomas. So all this starts to
It does, yeah.
raise the bar. And
Aren't you
people
getting
want
the train
more.
station too? Aren't y'all buying up?
What's that?
Aren't y'all buying up the train station too?
We're not buying it. The city
Okay.
owns it, but they've given us a lease to turn it into a restaurant.
Nice.
And we're going to make the Natchez Bluff, for the citizens of Natchez, all citizens. And do Arden Barnett, who's a promoter in Jackson, has just joined us, and we're going to start doing huge concerts on the Mississippi Bluff. Huge concerts.
Awesome. I've known him for a long time. He's a
great
great guy. Yeah. I always say he's one of the probably top 5 people that made this place fun to live. Because he's brought in such great concerts on that. So, another advantage, I guess, about Natchez is that you could pretty much get any film location site within a pretty close proximity too, because of the geography. And that's the beauty about Mississippi as a whole. No matter what you need in the background, you can find it here.
Absolutely. I mean, Natchez, say what you will about their strict preservation codes and anti-demolition. I have to explain a lot of times to people, they're like, what's going on? I go, that house is just being saved. It's somebody's going to buy it and fix it up. That's why it looks like that. But when we shot Get On Up, we were able to do 1930s Georgia. We did Paris. We did Vietnam because of the lush forests around here. You can shoot anything in Mississippi.
So I was going to ask you, I was joking earlier about how I'm now scared of Octavia Spencer because of Ma. But why did you decide to create a horror movie? That was just such a kind of a neat turn for you and for her.
Well, I can't say I created it. A guy named Scotty Landis wrote it, but I read it, and Octavia, it happens, and it happens to all directors too. You kind of get put into a box of what you can do.
Yeah.
And if you don't go for something different and show people that you can do something else, you get stuck. And Octavia was at a point where she's like, Tate, if I get asked to do one more movie where I have a period dress on and I'm just give great advice and I'm funny. And I said, well, would you murder a bunch of high school kids? She goes, yes. So I called Blumhouse and I said, what if I got Octavia Spencer to play Ma? And they were like, would she? I go, yes. And now the range of roles that Octavia get asked to do is just changed greatly. And same with me.
She was wonderful in it. And I will say that I use it as a teaching moment with my teenagers. I said, never go drinking in the basement with a middle-aged person who kind of points a gun at you when you first meet them. So,
well, I hate to break it to you, they're all group of teenagers. There's always somebody's mom that's kind of cool. So that's going to happen. There's nothing you can do about it.
Oh gosh. Okay. Well,
you had one too, if you remember.
Oh, I know. I did. I remember.
There was that mom.
Well, that's the thing. I think maybe part of the problem was I actually remember going to a few parties like that. So
of course you do. Too bad you remember.
I know, which is pretty amazing at this point in my life.
Right.
I remember, I don't even know where my car keys are. Look, where do you think you're going to be headed and probably be in the next 5 years? And where do you think Film Natchez will be in 5 years?
Well, sadly, like most people, dealing with the pandemic, we had 4 movies back to back coming to Natchez.
Yeah.
We expect when everything gets better, that to pick right back up. I plan to live in Churchill and bring as much business as I can. I hope to have a TV series that are with a 7-year run that will be set here in the area, which just does so much for an economy.
Yeah.
A season of television usually dumps about 80 million bucks into economy per season. Multiply that times 7.
Yeah, I would figure the streaming services really have changed the game because I mean, I would think that Natchez would be great for say Netflix or one of the different services coming and bringing productions there.
Absolutely. Everything just got put on hold, but John and I bought a sound stage down here and we're a one-stop shop. And now
Nice.
with the film incentive and we're able to guide people how to do it. Ours is strict in many areas, but we're able to be an ambassador for how it actually works.
Where did you put the soundstage?
It was an old Budweiser distributorship on the bluff.
Nice.
So we just
Nice.
bought it and
I can't think. That's a pretty
making it
southern.
look cool.
That's a pretty southern thing, Tate. It really is. An old beer distributorships now soundstage. That's you got Mississippi down there. Look, I don't want to keep you too long. I appreciate the time that you've had. Any final thoughts?
Just let's just keep creative endeavors alive in Mississippi. It's one of our strongest suits, and let's just keep arts funded and God bless the film incentive because it is doing much more than just making it more economically sensible for a film to come here. It has a ripple effect that no tourism board or chamber of commerce can create. You just can't beat it.
Yeah, I meant to bring that up because it's been reinstated. Governor Bryant signed it back in. It really does help with salaries, not only for the people that you bring in from outside, but for the people that you're hiring locally too.
Yeah, and what's great about it is the more it makes people want to be Mississippi based and live here permanently.
Well, Tate, thank you so much for all you're doing for Mississippi. And as a guy who tries to help promote the state myself, just because at the end of the day, I want my kids to stay here so I can see my grandkids.
There you go.
I have my selfish reasons, but I just wanted to say thanks. And I really, really enjoyed this time together. Thank you so much.
Thank you, buddy. Take care.
Take care.